You and I in a little toy shop, buy a vagabonds with the money we've got. Set them free at the break of dawn. Till one by one they were gone. Back at base, bugs in the software flash the message, something's out there. Floating in the summer sky, 99 red balloons go by. Summer sky, 90.
All right. Hello. Welcome. Good evening. Now, this is going to be quite a lengthy stream, but I want to do it. I need to do it, just for me, to be honest. It's been eating away at me. It really has, like an earworm. To do this stream, I felt a deep calling within me to give a fully comprehensive idea of where my thoughts are on this. This is going to be a commentary on what can only be described as the Mona Lisa of esoteric Sargonism. I'm going to be giving an incredibly autistic analysis to Porsalin's latest masterwork. And in order to do this, this stream, it's going to go on for a few hours. So before we begin, just get comfortable, grab some snacks, have a drink, and just relax. Please just get very, very comfy. So if you don't know, then you should know that Porsalin made a documentary about Sargon. Now, even though Porsalin's got a Patreon and he's got a Reddit, and I'm sure he's monetized his channel, the content he puts out actually isn't all that bad. And I have to say that I have enjoyed this Sargon documentary immensely. I really, really have. It's put me in mind of the Christian documentary from last year that Jenno Samuel put out. And I will go on the record to say this documentary is the very definition of absolute nectar. It's got great production values, entertaining narration, and it's got an interesting subject. Sadly, these things, they're few and far between on YouTube nowadays. And sometimes it takes someone like Porsalin to step up to the plate and deliver. And deliver he has. So without further ado, I will be screen sharing this, and we shall be able to, hopefully, watch along as we analyze Porsalin's documentary. So, let's fully begin. I hope we're all comfortable, because this is going to take a long time, but I need to do it. The calling within me dictates that this must be done. So,
who is Sargon of Akkad? According to Wikipedia, Sargon was the first ruler of the Akkadian Empire, known for his conquests of Sumerian city-states in the 24th and 23rd centuries BC. However, as described by Encyclopedia Dramatica, the name refers to a fat MRA alcoholic e-beggar, failed game developer, and circle-jerking YouTubing parasite. The truth probably lies somewhere in the middle.
No, I'd say Encyclopedia Dramatica's got it pretty much right. You know, in fact, they've left out a few things that I would have included in his biographical entry. But I think Encyclopedia Dramatica's got it fairly right, to be honest. Just take note of this thumbnail, because it's quite interesting, as it includes probably the two men most responsible for Sargon's downfall. Certainly Jim is... I don't think Sargon would be quite here were it not for mockery of his ill-fitting suit. I don't think he'd have quite gone this far. And I assume that person in the background's Ethan Ralph. Sadly, Jim's elbow's covering the gun somewhat, so we can't be too sure. But Sargon here is perfect. He's wearing the Anita hooped earrings. He's even wearing Anita's shirt. And I think on the vote badge, he's got "I wouldn't even vote for you" tagged on. So already this thumbnail is keynote, is absolute nectar. We've got Sky News here, probably asking for one of Sargon's might even rape you comments, or asking him to defend whether he would not.
Otherwise known as Carl Benjamin, this portly neckbeard has seen his channel grow to almost 1 million subscribers, with content ranging from identity politics, feminism and political correctness, to Brexit, social justice and the alt-right. And having amassed a dedicated following of highbrow e-thinkers, Sargon has become something of a celebrated Renaissance man to a growing number of professorial LARPers and Romanian rodents.
Already, we are nearly 3 minutes in, and already the narration here has been fantastic. The script here is on point. It's sharp. Who else could he be referring to? We don't even need V's face to pop up on this screen, because we all know, viewer and almost casual audience member alike, associates Romanian rodent with that person that seems to always be around Sargon no matter where he is. Certainly online anyway. I think even the person without any sort of knowledge of Sargon would recognize that the Romanian rodent did in fact refer to V and his Transylvanian skeletal structure, I suppose.
However, Sargon of Akkad is someone who has continually divided opinion, with his current Kiwi Farms thread sitting at over 700 incredibly mixed pages of Sargonian debate, with many convinced of his lolcow status given his constant gravitation towards YouTube dramatics. Others disagree, citing his important work towards opposing Marxist elites and their incessant waves of multiculturalist progressivism. But whatever your opinion of Carl the Brain Benjamin, one thing is for certain. This contemptuous garden gnome is a subject of great interest. This documentary will examine the events that have helped shape Sargon's erratic path, and in doing so, inspect whether his values as represented by a catalogue of ideological content potentially stand in stark opposition to behaviours he often exhibits. This documentary will further explore how, with Sargon's progression from shitposting smug lord and Kekistani meme killer to galaxy-brained political statesman, many are left wondering whether his political ambitions may be doing more harm than good. The laws surrounding...
So already the setup here is perfect. The tone is as it should be for a documentary discussing Sargon, because it treats him, it puts him on the pedestal that he wants to be on. He wants to be seen as this thinker that's disrupting the political dynamic within Britain, certainly Western civilization as a whole, I'm sure. But it offers Sargon that hook, that lure, to keep him watching, I suppose. Even though already we've referred to him as a portly neckbeard, a garden gnome, a purveyor of Romanian rodents, we're also inflating his ego to the point where he's likely going to watch this past the 5 minutes that was usually his quota for watching any video on him. So already the narration here is tackling this very fine tightrope and succeeding very admirably in sucking in not just Sargon, but I'm sure the orbiters that orbit the great Sargon of Akkad.
Sargon of Akkad is both deep and severely autistic, and as a result, this documentary will feature the most integral talking points to aid an overall narrative. Additionally, it's important to note that the underlying objective here is not to undermine Sargon's election campaign for European Parliament.
Well, I mean, he's doing that himself, so I'm not. This documentary, it's not going to go further than us. But to the boomers, Sargon's doing that admirably. He's very definitely suiciding his own campaign, self-immolating on the streets of the southwest of England, daily, hourly. So whatever damage this documentary does to Sargon will only really affect his online presence. The actual infamy of Carl Benjamin is known to the people of England simply by him going around with a white van, Milo Yiannopoulos in tow, getting fished, milkshaked, passion fruited, and I'm sure punched before the 23rd of May.
This is simply a summation of materials that already exist, chronicling the online footprints left by one of YouTube's most controversial figures. Ladies and gentlemen, I present Sargon of Akkad. For a deep-thinking sage of such scholastic reputation, Carl Benjamin's academic background is actually less than impressive, having achieved grades well below the national average when graduating high school.
Props to Porsalin here, honestly. Major big up to Porsalin here for actually including this. Many people making a Sargon documentary wouldn't have actually used the doxed CV as a source and pulled information from that in order to paint Sargon. A few people would have shied away from that. So major props to Porsalin for actually including that, because it's very integral to Sargon's character. Of course it is. As Porsalin will go on to say, he'll reveal the grades of what Carl got at school. And I don't know, the grades are mediocre at best, but it's the subjects that the grades stem from that are even more mediocre. It speaks to Sargon's, I don't know, academic underperformance, I suppose, but it also speaks to who he is now and where he's going now, and how this academic misperformance, misfiring, this underachievement in his early adulthood or early teens has manifest now into a kind of overcompensation to the point where he's being attacked with milkshakes and fish, yet he still thinks he's Donald Trump, and he still thinks he's going to be the next King of England.
His schooling was comically cut short, having failed 2 of his 3 courses in further education. This included a botched attempt at passing general studies, a popular subject amongst low IQ teens otherwise engaged in nitrous balloon parties and the nonchalant sharing of genital disease.
So whilst Porsalin's definition of general studies is entirely correct, just as an addendum to that, general studies is something that those in the English secondary education system almost take mandatorily in order to bulk up points to get into university. It almost fills out the qualifications almost. It's a buffer, it's a filler, it's an easy grade basically that you're put through in order to get you onto a university course at some point. The fact that Sargon failed that to the point where he got an E, it's strange. It's almost like failing breathing or failing, walking. Failing blinking is what failing general studies is like. Just trying to comprehend that concept. Whether Sargon deliberately failed this as a protest to the feminist system that was oppressing him, I don't know. Do I think that Sargon's a lazy fat chav? Yes. And I don't think his every action is a political protest at the people, the tyrannic people try to oppress him. I think he's just a lazy fat chaff. So any in general studies speaks to that, and it's a window into his soul. Props to Porsalin for including it into this documentary.
But for Karl, there existed more pressing concerns, such as where to position his legion of Bretonnian knights to prevent a relentless counter from the dark elves of Naggaroth. Karl's fascination with all things fantasy even saw him try his sausage-fingered hand at writing fiction. Into the Aether would represent Sargon's ill-fated attempt at immersing himself in the same retarded fairy tale worlds. He'd spend hours each day role-playing.
I've looked for this, I can't find it, because I was going to do an audiobook narration of all of these fantasy fictions that Sargon's written 12, 13 years ago now. So I've really been looking for this. So if someone can send me the link, by all means, and I will do that. But isn't it very telling that all of these lolcows we've looked at, past and present, seem to have this body of work behind them, and it almost always entails this fantasy concept where they are themselves written into the lore, they are themselves almost inevitably the main character, and they are themselves imbued with these magic powers that make them gods within the narrative that they've constructed. And I really want to get into these fictions, so if someone can send me them, I want to see if Sargon's got his own sylphs. I want to see if Sargon's writing prolific sex scenes where he's involved. I want to see this, because it's very telling that Sargon's, I don't know, lolcowdom was here all along in 2007. And now that he's Britain's national lolcow in the space year 2019, we can go back to these works of apparent fiction and wonder and see whether these were in fact a manifesto for what's happening with Sargon of Akkad right now. So I'm very interested in, these are my holy grail, these are my Dead Sea Scrolls. So if someone wants to send me the archive link to this, by all means. Thank you very much.
Short stories such as The Call, Mind Over Matter, and The Halls of Madness drew almost no response whatsoever.
Well, let's just look at a bit of the prose here. So this is Sargon's own hand penning this. And it's very basic, isn't it? The sentence construction is poor, to say the least. It speaks to someone who didn't get the grades at school. We don't have any sort of colourful description here. The preacher slammed his hand down on the platform. There are the more colourful, more descriptive ways of presenting that. Do you know? Sort of the way he capitalizes the pronoun of he and his. Do I think he's referring to a god here? Probably, but I don't know. It's very sixth form. This is very sixth form. Also, I was told once when I was at university that one doesn't need to use exclamation marks when writing dialogue, because really the description around it, the parentheses around it, the description that frames such said dialogue, it really should give the tone far before you have to feel the need to employ an exclamation mark. It's almost as though writing it in full caps to emphasize shouting. It's that sort of basic. It's that sort of underread, I suppose. So this is why I want to read all of these and work out where Sargon was in 2007. I think Sargon was he was 30 in 2007, or he was in his late 20s anyway. So he was very mature when he wrote these. And he was also on the dole. I don't know if that's in the documentary, but Sargon was on the dole for a long, long time. So let's go.
As a webpage of empty message boards and unanswered posts drew a much-needed curtain to Karl's short-lived literary career.
Eroth is the good and the light, brothers and sisters,
the preacher bellowed to his congregation. His voice echoed powerfully around the small chapel.
As he entered the gates of oblivion and stood before the enemy, did he not declare, "It is the faith of all good men to be both the saviour and the damned"?
The townsfolk gathered before him murmured in agreement.
"I cannot hear you."
"Eroth is the way," they chorused reluctantly. The preacher slammed his hand down on his podium.
It is his will protecting us from the enemy. He needs our strength so that he may prevent the enemy from enslaving us once more and dooming us to an eternity of servitude. Do not take your faith lightly.
You can just see Sargon writing this, can't you? He's just finished painting his Warhammer army. He's just had a furious wank at the whole thought of paganism and worshipping Odin. And he's decided to sit down at his typewriter, because I assume that's what they had in 2007. And he's decided to churn out this mediocre George R.R. Martin-esque tripe, I suppose the word would be. Dog shit, I suppose one could describe this as. But to Sargon in his late 20s, unemployed, unemployable, trying to carve out a career as the next George R.R. Martin, maybe it seemed credible then. I'm certain in his mind he didn't think he was going to be Sargon of Akkad, the most hated man in Britain, next to Fred West and Harold Shipman. I'm certain he didn't have that in his mind, that he'd run for UKIP eventually. I'm certain he didn't have in his mind that he was going to start ranting at the white N-words and giving out thoughts on whether or not it depends on the child, or whether or not he'd rape a victim of sexual assault. I'm not sure whether he was there, but certainly in 2007, I think that Sargon thought he was going to be the next Tolkien.
Brothers and sisters, for dark times are coming, and only his grace and sacrifice will see us saved.
Some 6 years later, Carl Benjamin will take the first steps of his YouTube journey, uploading a series of potato sound conversations on the subject of feminist video game critic Anita Sarkeesian.
So here's we're going to at this point give a slight criticism of the documentary. There's a 6-year period, right, where Sargon is sort of unaccounted for. But in his earlier videos, he used to say that, you know, he's been on the rock and roll for a long time. He's found himself without a job. He's found himself almost self-employed trying to do this video game. And the reason why he's monetizing, the reason why he's getting a Patreon, the reason why he's collecting from his ad revenue is because he needs to support his family and stuff like that, because he wants to get off the dole. He's in this council house, what have you, right? So that was Sargon in that 6-year period. And if you believe in certain schools of thought, then you'll see a slight dubiousness in Sargon's almost humble origins to where he is now. And I mean, people are asking, why is he still in this council house when he's effectively a millionaire, when he was effectively earning at least 20 grand a month, from his various income sources? Why is he still in this council house? You know, what's going on there? So what's going on with the tax affairs, some people would say. So I think that's 6 years pre-Anita, you know, the Stone Age of Sargon requires a bit more investigation. But as we'll go forward in this documentary, there is a great deal to be discussed post-Anita or during Anita, and we'll understand Sargon even further.
These videos represented the beginning of Sargon's relentless
What a beautiful woman, by the way. Truly our spiritual queen.
obsession towards the bulbous-nosed Armenian.
Dictionary.com defines conversation as the informal interchange of thoughts, information, etc. by spoken words or communication between persons. We are not having a dialogue, Anita. You are talking to us.
That's quite nostalgic for me, to be honest. I'm not going to lie. When I was 16, 17, Sargon was... I thought Sargon was the shit. I honestly did. Him ranting and raving at Lacey Green and Anita Sarkeesian with a Wikipedia image of Sargon of Akkad, and stopping every 4 or 5 seconds after each one of their words and just sort of losing his shit and pretending to be this academic scientist, it got me. I thought this was great. I thought this was absolute nectar at the time. I thought this was fantastic. And the beauty of it all was, certainly going back to it, is that Sargon was recording these with like a potato, with like an old Motorola. That's how he was recording the shit. And it sounds like though he's in the bathroom for pretty much the first 30 videos of his early canon. and envisioning Sargon on the toilet, ranting and raving at Anita Sarkeesian as he's trying to pass whatever was coming out of his body during that specific moment in time, it makes it even more humorous.
You mean a lecture. 3 words, and 2 seconds in, and you've already misinterpreted the meaning of a word.
Also this old format. It's amazing. Oh, we need to bring this back to YouTube. We need to bring back this format where YouTube commenters would act as though they were engaging in a proper conversation with the person they were pressing pause on. So you've just heard Sargon there just sort of go, "Oh, yet again, Anita, you've misunderstood what I said 2 seconds ago," as though she could actually hear you, as though she was present in a conversation that was being had in real time. And this wasn't a heavily edited, pre-recorded video. It's been released long after she's made these initial comments. We need this back in YouTube. We need this air of sarcasm. We need it back. And I'm going to bring it back. Fuck it. If PPP's left, I'm bringing it all back. Fuck them all.
Having picked a name befitting his narcissistic fantasies, the 5'7" men's rights activist expanded his contents to the many evils of third-wave feminism.
All of these thumbnail titles. So this was the Wikipedia image that brings back classic nostalgia for me. This is how I envisioned Sargon for the first 3 years of his internet presence. I certainly didn't envision him to be this garden gnome, this 40-year-old man. I thought he was much younger. I thought he was my age, actually. Maybe slightly older, maybe in his late 20s, I thought. At the time, I thought Sargon was sort of on my level. A sixth former, maybe. Who knows? I didn't realize he was sort of on the wrong side of 30. And this was personal to him in a manner that meant this was his living. I thought, I suppose we all bought into the lie that he was this video games developer and he was coming at Gamergate with the whole idea of being an industry insider and criticizing Anita, not just on feminism, but on the points that she didn't quite understand the industry, didn't understand how to develop a video game. And as it soon became apparent, nor did Carl. Isn't it so 2013, 2014 to see these titles, though? Feminism, cis, men of straw, all of this stuff seems to have gone by the wayside now. I suppose it still exists if you actually type in Sargon's channel and you see his latest uploads. Maybe Thunderthough's still doing this sort of stuff. But the whole hatred of feminism and being offended that you're being called cis by some mentally ill tranny, it seems to have fallen by the wayside. I mean, no one cares about this shit anymore. It almost seems irrelevant. It's like Sargon's talking about ants. It's like Sargon is an ant talking about his fellow ants. But back in the day, this was amazing.
Dedicating his entire channel to the extreme exploits of a handful of mentally ill women.
Feminists are generally massively unpleasant people to be around. No one wants to be a massively unpleasant person to be around, and for some reason feminists can't seem to see how unpopular they are. And so they get in everyone's shit, and they're like, blah, 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 you must do this.
Oh no, the video's failed. Okay, I might have to put it in a slightly lower. Sargon's been talking too much shit, so the video has indeed failed. Will it reload? Press F for this stream. Oh, I might have to reload the page, sadly. All right, here we go. Here we go, lads. Will it say, oh, where were we? Were we on like 4 or 5 minutes? We were at 9 minutes. Okay, 6 minutes, cool.
Potato Sound conversations on the subject of feminist video game critic Anita Sarkeesian. These videos represented the beginning of Sargon's relentless obsession towards the bulbous-nosed Armenian.
Dictionary.com defines conversation as the informal interchange.
Oh, I love this. I loved it when Sargon he'd go onto dictionary.com in almost every one of his videos attacking Anita. He'd go onto dictionary.com and explain basic things like conversation. Conversation is defined as two people talking to each other. He did it a few times, like, oh, feminism is the want for the equality between genders, and then he'd proceed to attack Anita or Lacey or whoever was the subject of his ire at that point with the dictionary.com definition of the term. And it would be a massive epic own. And certainly when I was 17 years old, I'd be going, yes, fucking Sargon lays down the law. Sargon now owns the feminists. He's triggered the libs to own the libs. As I say, we're going back to a very nostalgic time, but very definitely Sargon using dictionary.com definitions to win arguments is something that he needs to resurrect on the UKIP campaign tool. Definitely.
Information, etc., by spoken words or communication between persons. We are not having a dialogue, Anita. You are talking to us.
The best thing about this is that Sargon expects Anita to be taking notes. You know?
You mean a lecture. 3 words, and 2 seconds in, and you've already misinterpreted the meaning of a word.
Having picked a name befitting his narcissistic fantasies, the 5'7" men's rights activist expanded his contents to the many evils of third-wave feminism, dedicating his entire channel to the extreme exploits of a handful of mentally ill women.
Feminists are generally massively unpleasant people to be around. No one wants to be a massively unpleasant person to be around, and for some reason feminists can't seem to see how unpopular they are. And so they get in everyone's shit, and they're like, blah, 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 you must do this my way, you must do this way, blah, 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 blah. And everyone's like, look, fuck off.
As his YouTube channel grew, so too did his mega-minded self-assurance. And despite failing miserably as a creative writer, a chest-puffing Sargon was not deterred. Having dedicated his formative years to wrestling goblins or slaying wizards or whatever it is you do in Warhammer, Carl's childlike imagination was once again abuzz with fairy tale adventures. Along with Russ Jarvis and Giuseppe Constantino, the trio would create their very own tower defense strategy game, Necromancer.
Yeah, and this was Sargon's credential in order to get into Gamergate. You know, sort of to gain prominence within Gamergate, he had to present himself as not just another sweaty neckbeard on the rock and roll, making videos attacking another woman he didn't like. So he had to give himself some sort of kudos and credential, and Necromancer was that. I suppose, looking back on it, it was the right move. It got him to where he was now. If anyone envies Sargon's position, just go back in time to 2014, lie about being a video games developer, make this RuneScape clone, and ride the 12K a month, the traps and the mountings of cocaine until the space year 2019 in your UKIP trail. Necromancer was a game that I suppose only Sargon could have made. It's hard to believe that those 2 other people had any input. Maybe they were actually the ones that turned this into a video game and not just a series of highly autistic Sargonic wank fantasies that he was pumping out. But this is the game that only he could have made. You know, I don't imagine any sort of originality with Sargon. I don't imagine him inventing anything that would have required a realization of a whole new world, a whole new sphere for which to create characters. No, I mean, it had to be a pre-existing rip-off of RuneScape. Yeah, let's have a look at this Necromancer controversy, because he did crowdfund this, and then he had to give it back because he was too lazy to keep up the lie, to pretend that he was a video games developer.
I'm Russ.
And I'm Carl.
And we're 2/3 of Otherworld Software. We'd like to present Necromancer, something we like to call a reverse zombie apocalypse game.
You are the Necromancer, risen from the grave and determined to start the zombie apocalypse. To achieve this, you have an army of mindless, shambling zombies that you can raise to do your bidding.
You know what it reminds me of? When I was at school, pretending not to do work during like IT classes, I'd go onto video games like this on the web browser and pretend that I was doing work. I'd hide this in a tab that was hidden behind an Excel spreadsheet, and I'd play something like this. You know,
it won't be that easy though. As against you are a group of survivors and heroes who know what you're doing and are coming to stop you. And they are good at killing zombies. If you like the sound of this, Please pledge now to help kickstart the zombie apocalypse.
By some miraculous act of a god Sargon the Skeptical, as on many occasions debunked, over $8,000 was raised for the project, with pledges up to $500 for the privilege of naming characters and receipt of a unique forum rank.
This was sort of on the cusp of people being exposed for being cunts over Patreon. And by that, I mean putting out these incredibly unrealistic tiers and giving out very shit prizes in return. And what stopped all of this was that guy with the glasses Kickstarter GoFundMe thing, where they had a 500 quid tier as well, but maybe even been higher than that. And your simple reward was you got to have a Skype conversation with Doug Walker, and you had to pay for your own plane tickets and hotel to go out and fly out to the that guy with the glasses studios and meet Doug Walker in the flesh. But you could only meet him for half an hour or 25 minutes. I can't quite remember which. And people were outraged. People said that this was diabolical. This was not what crowdfunding should be used for. But before that whole controversy, be in no doubt that Sargon was very much a part of exploiting people who he know would pay this stuff because, you know, they're alone. they don't get out much. They've got access to their parents' money, and they're gonna spend 500 quid pledging to a video game that has no originality and is made by their intellectual, spiritual king Sargon of Akkad. So this is some shady shit, and it's even shadier that he didn't make the game, and it's even shadier that he had to return the money some years later. In fact, that he held on to the money. It's shady.
Unfortunately for the backers, very little evidence of any sort of playable product would ever surface. And given the early demo was so badly optimized that you'd need the IBM Summit to achieve double-digit frame rates, things did not look good for the trio of bungling developers. Throughout the pledge drive, Sargon would continue to placate supporters, with a combination of shameless plugs and ambiguous updates.
Okay, time for a little shameless self-promotion, if you'll allow me. And I do apologize if I'm telling you things you already know. Please feel free to ignore this video. But I've had a lot of new subscribers recently, so I thought it might be worth telling people that I actually have two other channels. The first one is a gaming channel called Ve Victus, where I have done a Necromancer development stream, so you can go and see me actually working on the game if you would like to see that. It was actually a huge amount of fun to do once I finally got the software working. And
I think I was actually a part of one of those Necromancer streams, and it was 2 hours of watching Sargon watch YouTube tutorials on how to work this program and how to actually create this video game. In fact, I remember watching people in the comment section going, this is not what our money was to be spent on. You should have had the base set of expertise before you asked for all of this money. You should have had the skill set already there before you decided to monetize it. It was fraud, it was charlatanism, and it's most blatant.
Definitely be doing more in future.
But following claims that Giuseppe, the shady Italian responsible for the game's shitty artwork, had quit before attempting to extort the remaining team, the project was well and truly circling the drain.
I'm not going to lie, there was a lot of miscalculation on my part. As everyone knows, I'm sure, this is the first game I've been developing properly, and so I was wildly optimistic. I won't lie. But this situation wasn't helped by our artist quitting directly after the Kickstarter was successful and trying to extort us for money. So I became the artist. This is one of the primary reasons that there's been such a long delay.
But, I mean, this guy quitting after they had the Kickstarter money, does it not just scream of someone who's just wants to get out of this Titanic, wants to just leave this potential fraud investigation? Wants to wash their hands of this crime. I mean, they've taken the money. They've got a wild amount of cash thrown at them by well-meaning Kekastanis and liberalists, and they finally sat together and they've gone, okay, let's do this game. And Sargon's admitted that he has no expertise or experience making video games. He doesn't even know how to develop anything. And this guy has gone cold, I imagine. He's gone, we've committed fraud, basically, and I need to get out. I need to get out of the country. I need to change my name, change my identity. I can't stay in this. I can't stay with you in this lie, Sargon. But notice how Sargon shifts it and effectively calls this man a coward for not being a charlatan, for not taking part in this conspiracy to defraud people.
Is that I've been the one making all of the levels and trying to make everything look good. And I'm no artist, so I've had to learn a hell of a lot by doing it.
As it stands, no official completed version of Necromancer has ever been released. Additionally, it is not clear whether Sargon had returned any of the money invested in what was at best a severely unplayable experience, boasting low-res assets, repetitive animations, and literally no underlining concept whatsoever.
Now, I just want to jump in on Porsalin. Now, I think, if memory serves, that Sargon did refund the Necromancer money, but I think it was 2 years later. It was definitely a long period of time after the project was sort of mysteriously not talked about and alluded to only in the vaguest of terms, that he decided to give people their money back. I don't know what sources Porsalin was working from, but it seems that a lot of Porsalin sources stem from well, they're more focused on the recent Sargonic happenings, and they don't really go sort of pre-2016, pre-2017, really. So the minutiae of stuff like, did he refund the Necromancer money? I think my memory serves that he did, but it was a long period of time after. But it speaks to sort of the sources that Porsalin was provided with when compiling this documentary.
Yeah, but honestly, right, I was actually really, and I was really genuinely disappointed in him, because we thought we were friends with him. So to have him then say, "Oh no, we're quitting I'm quitting the project, and I want you to give me $1,500, or you can't use my models." Well,
did you have a contract with him?
I think we did, yeah. And his demand was given.
Your answer really shouldn't be to, "Did you have a contract with this man?" It really shouldn't be, "I think we did." It should be a definitive yes, surely. If this was a legitimate business arrangement and not just something you cooked up on the fly, in order to get money from people, and then once you had that money, you'd start looking at YouTube tutorials of how to develop a video game. It speaks to the level of arrogance, I suppose, that Carl had, not just at this point, but this arrogance is magnified now.
I've got some money, and I'm quitting the project, and you can use the models that I've made, or you can't use my models. And so we don't use his models. None of his models are in the current version of the game. The issue is that he was annoyed that we hadn't given him money. But the thing is, we weren't like employing him. He was a partner in the group.
So he was part owner of the company?
Well, that's what we were trying to make him.
As for Sargon's YouTube channel, things would go from strength to strength, with his flagship show This Week in Stupid gaining serious momentum. The series took a dry and somewhat satirical view on the week's events, and the popularity of the show saw Sargon quickly propelled into the YouTube mainstream.
Let's just define what This Week in Stupid was. It was essentially a Mundane Matt weekly show, is what it was. It was Sargon doing his Mundane Matt tribute act, compiling it into like a half-hour weekly show on a Sunday, reading mainstream media articles and going, "I can't believe this. Imagine my shock. The feminist system," over and over again ad nauseum. And that eventually picked up support from people outside of Gamergate. People who just entered this simply because they didn't like the crazy coloured-haired SJW. So that's how Sargon gained his position, his platform, essentially being Mundane Matt. He was never anything different, really. But the way Sargon presented himself was as Mundane Matt, but the way Sargon presented himself was, "I am Aristotle doing Mundane Matt. I'm Plato doing a Mundane Matt tribute act." And for some reason, that took off more than Mundane Matt doing Mundane Matt did. God knows why. But here we are.
Hello everyone, welcome to This Week in Stupid for the 6th of March of 2016. If you find anything you'd like to see in This Week in Stupid, tweet using hashtag TWIS, or post it to Sargon of Akkad.
And this was the most contemptuous thing about This Week in Stupid, was that he wouldn't even do any first-hand research. He'd beg for people to send him stuff, send him articles, because he was too lazy to type things into Google and compile them himself. He was too lazy to figure out the world and his opinion himself. He had to have people send this to him ridiculously. This is contemptuous. This really is. But it speaks to his arrogance that, I mean, why should he go out into the world when people are sending him things and he's going to use those things that are sent to him as the basis of his knowledge? Well, he's not going to venture forth and do stuff firsthand. He's above it. He's above this lowly activity that only you Kakistani should do. You should procure things for the Godfather.
And I'll find it. It was just complete try-hard cringe. I mean, look at this picture. If this isn't the most try-hard fucking picture I've ever seen, I don't know what is. That's it. That is the entire BuzzFeed article.
And this was it. This was it. All of Sargon's This Week in Stupid videos revolved around what's this latest film that has feminist support? What's this latest film that has an all-female cast? Let's do 6 videos ragging on Ghostbusters 2016. Oh yeah, what outrageous things have BuzzFeed said? You know, who goes to BuzzFeed and expects to agree with what's being written there? You know, but he was going there. It was an easy. This was low-hanging fruit to Sargon. This was an easy win. This made him feel better about himself when he was making these videos, and it gained him an audience. Let's not lie. It got him to the nearly 1 million subscribers he is now, and it got him confidence enough to go out into the real world, to stand in the streets of southwest England and make a complete arse of himself with a white van and Milo Yiannopoulos in tow.
Elamin Abdel Mahmoud got paid his day's wages to write 3 fucking words for BuzzFeed. These guys didn't come up to you and start the violence, but this is not... They don't interview the Klansmen and go, what was it like being beaten on the floor by these protesters? It's fucking awful.
But it was a phenomenon known as Gamergate that gave Carlo Vicard the greatest of signal boosts.
Okay, so Porsalin's got his history wrong here. Sargon entered YouTube his first video was to attack Anita. So it wasn't This Week in Stupid, then Anita, then Gamergate. It was Gamergate and then everything else.
For those rock-dwelling boomers who, for whatever reason, still don't know what Gamergate was, here's a very quick summary. Zoe Quinn, a promiscuous video game developer responsible for the interactive waste of time Depression Quest, was ousted in a blog written by her ex-boyfriend Erin Joney as a fat, disgusting whore and all-round awful human being. In response, Zoe caught the attention of her good friends in video game publication, claiming justified backlash she received from the blog post represented a wider misogynist problem towards the treatment of women in video games.
Hello, everyone.
Just a quick thing here. Zoe Quinn arguably had more credentials to call herself a video games developer than Sargon did. And the way Sargon came at the attack of Zoe Quinn was, she's made this piece of shit game called Depression Quest, which is essentially a fully text-based game, and it's about the issues of mental illness. It's a TLDR read, and look, objectively, it's shit. I will call it's whippet shit of the highest order. But Sargon's critique of Depression Quest was to say, well, I'm a video games developer, and this is dog shit. How dare you charge people for this? How dare you get good reviews for this when I myself am an industry insider? So it was interesting. I don't know if I can't remember if Porsalin goes through it in this documentary, but I think he leaves it out. But just remember that bit of lore.
I really wanted to do a video like this, where I just have a bit of a ramble and tell you just why this all matters so much to me. I really wish that these social justice warriors could understand that, look, what you guys are talking about, and all the things that you guys are talking about, are very unimportant to the actual business of gaming. There's literally no other activity like it, really, that really exists as such an individualistic, meritocratic community.
Already back then, he was talking about gamers as individuals. It's an individualistic community. They're a community. They're a group. They're a collective of individuals. Already, he was brewing liberalism when he was attacking Zoe Quinn.
So this is why I'm so offended, so deeply, mortally offended, that these corrupt bastards are meddling with my hobby.
Look, imagine being mortally offended mortally offended. It offends you to your very core, to your very life essence, that someone's talked smack about a video game you like. Not even a video game you like, but just video games in general. Imagine that shocking you and shaking you to your very core. Imagine that, in fact, energizing you and making that into who you are now. Imagine someone saying something, slighting video games, and that being the very basis for your political career, for your political ambitions, for who you are as a person. And imagine being mortally offended by someone talking smack on a video game.
These publications then united to co-opt an accusatory message of bigoted evils towards their very own readership. It wasn't long before the likes of Anita Sarkeesian and Brianna Wu leapt at the chance of profile boosting as a result of this new anti-patriarchal movement, with Wu even running for Congress on the back of online harassment against women. This prompted a tsunami of criticism.
Now we know where Sargon got the idea from, right? Because also, didn't Anita address the United Nations? I think Sargon's political ambitions were brewed here when he was, and it was brewed in envy and jealousy. Even he was jealous of these women, and he wanted to be them, and that's what he's done. He's tried to be them, but Sargon's not going to address the United Nations. He might address the Hague, for war crimes, but I don't think he's going to address the United Nations.
From just about anybody with an AdSense account, as waves of click-thirsty grifters clung to the Gamergate narrative.
The game's journalism is all in San Francisco. They're all located right there, which is why they all know each other, why they're all friends, and then they get the indie dev scene, which is in San Francisco.
All right, this was the galactic-brained Gamergate theory that all of them shared. Thunderfoot, Mundane Matt, Sargon, they all circle jerked this conspiracy theory, and it was simply that all of these people they hate, all of these women they harass, they all live in San Francisco, and they all seem to socialize with each other, and they all, therefore, are responsible for the evils that are oppressing them when they play video games. I mean, there are 3 question marks here. I mean, who knows where this was? But this is the conspiracy theory, the galactic brain take that they were all sharing, that they were all circle jerking for. And it attracted a lot of Kyrgyzstanis. It got Mundane Matt 100,000 subscribers. Just take that in, right? So this was the ice cold take that actually took off, believe it or not.
It's like, but this is where if you look and see who is on each other's podcasts, who is on each other's shows, who writes, for each other's websites from time to time, an opinion piece, you start seeing just how, it just entwined it all is. You are an up-and-coming YouTuber, much like myself. People tend to talk about these things, okay? Yeah. And if something starts going around YouTube that's getting any kind of traction, people are going to start talking. Larger channels are going to start picking up on it. Yeah. Internet Aristocrats, he was at 42,000 subscribers when his video launched. He's now at over 50.
With general sentiment favouring those fighting against video game journalists and the relentless ideological campaign, Gamergaters saw this as one of the first major victories against the regressive left. However, the official narrative still cites the movement as being little more than a neo-Nazi harassment campaign against poor little girls who didn't do nothing.
So let's jump into Gamergate for a second, and then we'll get back to...
Let's go on record here. Anita, Saint Anita, didn't do nothing. She didn't do nothing wrong. She was harassed and pilloried and not even raped by this bastard, Carl Benjamin, Sargon of the Cat. And look, let's face it, Anita was right. Anita was 100% right. I hope she's somewhere now. I hope she's standing on the balcony of her very, very expensive Long Island Beach apartment. And I hope she's just taking a sip of wine as she looks out onto the horizon and just has a smug chuckle to herself over what Sargon's become, and that she has indeed had the last laugh. I hope she, in fact, flies out to Swindon, knocks on his door, and just shakes his hand and just says, "Hello, Carl, it's me." And just laughs at his face, because he deserves it. Anita deserves this. She won, and Carl lost.
some of that stuff, because Gamergate, I think, is one of the things that really sort of put you on the map.
For me, it's a very definite reaction to regressives infiltrating the video game media. But then the regressives turned up and started being corrupt in a whole different way. Instead of being motivated by money, which I suppose is to their credit, they were motivated by ideology. And so now they would hire people into positions and promote things that were all based on cronyism. And then,
isn't it strange, that Sargon was essentially giving the argument for anti-Semitism, and certainly for Semitic influence in media industries. Yet when he was presented with that argument, that theory, that set of facts and ideas, he dismissed them outright, and he said himself as opposed to all of that, when it was a natural progression of what Gamergate was. People were pointing out that all of these people had a connection, but it didn't just end at video games. No, it was a government thing. It was a world thing, right? Yet Sargon decided to end it all at video games and not really progress it. It was just feminists. Who cares who they are genetically, by blood, by tribe? No, it was just feminists, and we should end it there. So when he was presented with, you could argue illegitimate claims from the alt-right. I suppose in hindsight they probably were, but the basic core of the argument still stands. When he was presented with those arguments, he just smugly chuckled on a cloud and thought he'd win outright. He thought he could stay mocking feminists and mocking colored blue hairs without actually talking about the wider problems. What actually caused these people to enter into existence? What actually is this feminist system? Who created it? What's this very term feminist system all about? He used to touch on the whole idea of cultural Marxism, but even he's dropped that now. I mean, he just talks about regressive left without actually identifying who they are beyond colored-haired and feminists, because he doesn't want to seem racist or alt-right or anything reasonable or logical. Who knows what's going through Sargon's mind? Oh, no, the stream has crashed yet again. We're going to have to reload the page. We are 16 minutes in. I think we're nearly an hour into the stream. So I did say this was going to take a long, long time. But we are going to persevere, my friends. In fact, let's skip to 17 minutes. Or 18 minutes, let's do it. So far, yeah, Porsalin's done a very good job compiling this documentary. We've touched upon a few things that are slightly wrong in the Sargonic lore, but as I say, I think he was working from source material which was relatively recently compiled and wasn't really delving into the minutiae of I don't think you're as smart as you believe you are, Sargon, pre-Spencer Sargon, you could say. I don't know what's happening with the stream. The video isn't loading. It seems to have stopped. Maybe it's the power of blocking out all of Porsalin's ads that's causing my computer a bit of work. Let's reload this documentary yet again. Okay, here we go. Press 1 if you're enjoying the stream. I see a lot of people saying that a lot of people are saying that PPP has returned. That's amazing if he has. I hope he actually catches those Godwinson news alerts that we're keeping atop of his whereabouts during his absence. I don't know. I really don't know what's happening with the stream. I didn't bank on this happening. It should be playing the video, surely. I don't know what's happening here. We may have to do a part 2 to the stream. I'll just reload it in terms of the Hangout. In fact, that's what we will do now. So I'm going to stop this and just look for the next live event. Yeah, look for the next live event to be continued, because we're going to finish this documentary, believe me.